Hello everybody and welcome back to MentorZ. Today we are continuing our interview with Tim Alison. Last we left off, Tim was discussing that we have the ability to reset our minds. Let's jump back in. Oh my God, actually this is so amazing that you just brought this up because I was actually talking to several people about this the other day. So recently in my life had a very interesting person walk out. Forcefully. I forced them out, kind of shoved them out. And, that was a decision of mine because, it was a bad, it was not good for me, simply put. And, as teenagers do, they're cooing in my ear, sweet things like, oh, everything, I care and I'm this, I'm that way. And I'm like, that's nice, but I can't have this in my life. And so immediately this person turns around and, typey, some nasty things on the internet about me. And it was funny because in that moment I was a little angry. At that moment I was a little angry. I was like, oh man, that's so rude. That's so rude. But, at the same time, I took, I had that deep breath and I was like, I don't want to be angry though. And, speaking of like the reflection process of, I look back in the mirror and I'm like, you know what, this is okay. And this taught me this lesson. Because, at the end of the day, I don't want to be controlled by anger and I don't want to be controlled by fear. And I don't want to be, I don't want to conform to that stupid attitude of like, well, they did this to me. And I'm going to be really upset. Like, that's not that's not productive. But what is productive is reflecting on it. And what is productive is to choosing your own mentality and your own path. So I look at this, I take a deep breath and I'm like, this is okay. You've taught me so much. I'm so glad that you said these awful things about me because it helps me remember what I learned. And on top of that, I forgive you. Like and it's so incredible to do these things because part of me, I partially was, raised that way. And I also learned that on my own through like other books and other, mediums and other life experiences, but it's so much more powerful. And not a lot of younger kids understand that at all. Like I literally had to, I had a very interesting conversation with one of my coaches. I play multiple sports, so I won't say what sport and I won't say, what coach. But, at the end of the year, this coach has been pushing me a lot to join, like to conform to this team. And I couldn't conform to the team because I thought differently, I talked differently, and I acted differently. And the way that they talked and acted and did, I didn't want to do those things, So I told me, my coach literally looked me in the eye, he said, why can't you just conform to the team? And I said, because that's not who I am. Like it was that simple. And, and it's not like a big, like, oh, this is my identity, but it's a choice of, like morality, and it's a choice of, of productivity. And it's a choice of well-being, like on the concepts of like not conforming and of like forgiveness. It's not like, oh, I'm doing this to be a rebel, or, oh, I'm doing this to have like, to have that like dangling that moral compass above you. It's more of, it's doing it for your own benefit. It's doing it so you can feel better about yourself, especially on not conforming. Like if you're conforming to a group of people, especially when you're my age, that, want to do bad things, not good, not fun, same with forgiveness.
No. God, there's so many things I want to respond to there. First of all, I've been very recently, one of the things I do with my my mentoring clients is I go through a process of identifying one word. Identify the one word that sort of, defines your life philosophy, and what you're all about. And that was a really challenging thing for me to do after 60 years, because as you can imagine, I got a lot of life experiences in there. But the word that I've chosen, to define everything I think I've done and do is defy. And I don't mean defiance in the as being like trying to start an insurrection or to rebel or to just say no for being, for the sake of being contrarian. I simply mean, respectful defiance. The one thing I can promise you, because the other thing that I really caught on your words, you talked about your values. Every single time you compromise one of your core values, there's a little chip that's taken away from you. I'm not saying you can't get it back. And this can be interpreted so many different ways. It can be, making a moral decision, but it can mean so much more. It can be just simply doing something that, for example, that you ultimately know has the potential to harm somebody.
Mm-hmm.
What would be a really good way of going through, if everyone went through their life committed to never doing intentional harm? Just imagine the world we'd live in. People don't stop and think about those things. And it's I go back to your example too of this presumably gentleman with the fast fingers on the keyboards and stuff like that. But you know what the problem is? I don't know, Ava. But the problem is this. Most parents, if they knew about it, would have gotten involved. And they would have called it bullying. Yes. And here's another thing that's going to cause some controversy. I'm going to have to look. I know what it's like to be bullied as a kid. I have very brittle bones. I broke it's not that I hide this. It just doesn't normally come up very often. But I had 15 broken bones, like arms or legs, by the time I was 15 years old.
Oh, goodness.
Because my bones were not absorbing calcium. This was a real problem for a guy who, like you, wanted to play every imaginable sport on the face of the earth. And people laughed their heads off at me, like, how stupid can this guy be? Because he just keeps doing it. And my parents got to the stage where they banned me. They said, you can't play, like, I'm Canadian, so street hockey with a tennis ball and hockey sticks on the road, this was it, eh? You can't play street hockey. Well, sure, Mom, I just went a little further away from home to find the game. And then after a while they realized it was better for them to let me play, because then when I broke a bone, I was at least close to home. They could but you get in this situation. My nickname was Captain Crunch. That was a cereal in the day, but kids laughed at me. I could never fight back with my fists because I'd get killed. And people did push me around. But you know what? If my parents had gone in and tried to solve all my problems, in life, they would have taken away from me. You're talking about the gift of, I couldn't imagine the gift of, of the concentration camp. I mean, it's there for sure, but I don't think anybody who hasn't experienced something that extreme could ever really relate. Mm-hmm. But it took me 30 years to realize the gift of all of those problems I had as a child, because people have been asking me for, like, when I was 31 years of age, I was in the top 2% of wage earners in the country of Canada. I mean, in terms of salary. And I was the poster child for what success was supposed to look like. Married, check. 2 kids, check. House, check. University degree, check. Fabulous paying job, check. Throw in stuff that I'd never thought about, but I was wearing tailor-made clothes, monogrammed shirts, gold jewelry. You don't see any of that crap on me today because I never really cared about it. But it was the uniform, and I was spending all this money in it, and I walked away from it. I quit that job, and my wife's from this tiny rural fishing village in a very remote community in Nova Scotia. We've been here for 31 years now. I quit, and there was no work. For a guy with brittle bones and hands that, this size, you don't go work in a fishing boat or cut trees down or hammer houses together, which is what the men did, and still to a large extent do, in this community. I had to start my own business. And people say, where'd you find the courage to do that? And I never really knew how to answer them. And it came to me a few years ago. Well, it's not that I wasn't scared. Of course I was scared. I mean, we all have this internal voice. It's there when we're, and if we're about to do something really stupid, like, call that guy up and try and go back with him, or jump out of an airplane without a parachute or something like that, this voice in our head says to us, yeah, no, this is not smart. Don't do it, eh? But that same voice goes on really high alert when we're thinking of doing something that we really want. It really gets scared about transitions. And so it goes on super high alert. I have that voice in my head, same as you and everybody else. But I realize now that subconsciously I was asking a second question. Mm. If I go ahead and do this, am I going to, what is the probability that I'm going to end up with some broken bones or in the hospital or worse? And I really mean that. I didn't understand it. But I would think, well, I could lose some money. Or I might have to, crawl. The worst thing is we might have to drag our ass back to Toronto and start over again. I sure as hell didn't want to do it. But, was my world going to end? Well, no, And now I realize that that's created this internal defiance, this refusal to, like, I believe it's a lot of what, what Don talks about is this, this system that essentially has been set up to encourage people to settle. And I think the only reason that I've lived the life I have is because I learned early that, that I had the power to defy. And when I was defying my parents and playing sports and getting hurt, eventually I realized that when teenage boys got to be 14 or 15, that the harm that would happen if I was playing ice hockey with them it wasn't would I get hurt, it was how badly would I get hurt. So then common sense, that voice said, no, this truly is. Anybody who says you can do anything in life is full of shit. Kind of like maybe that language isn't allowed on the show, but edit it out. But it is, eh? They are, because there are certain things, not many though. I mean, and mostly the things that we can't do are tied to some physical risk. Something that, we just can't get by. I can't be a professional ice hockey player because of lack of ability, but also because, I had to stop training. I couldn't have worked at it for the years that was required to develop those kind of skills.
Yeah.
And I just think that I want parents to back off. I want parents I'm not underestimating some of the things I see in this bullying, and some of it goes way too far, particularly things that involves, intimate images and stuff like that. I'm all over that. I am all over stopping that kind of stuff, and we've really got to, but you know what? This kind of stuff that you were dealing with, it's a different medium. It's a more easily distributed medium, but if you think it wasn't going on when I was growing up, it was just locker room chat, that's all.
Yeah.
But it was around the school in 3 minutes flat, because as soon as everybody went out of the locker room, the boys' locker room, it was, whispering to the person next, and before the end of the day, everybody in the school knew that this girl or that guy was, doing, unethical, or, where I'm going with it.
Yeah.
You just got to let you guys figure these things out. I think way more. I think
it's, and I completely understand parents that they want to take care of their child and they want to love their child. Like, again, I was the first, again, watching my little brother, my little brother and sister grow up, my mom takes care of them a lot, right? And it's, and my mom wants to love Anna and Grant, and it's really it's really fun to watch, because I'm not gonna lie, I love my mom very much, but they're a little more coddled than I am. So they're taking care. Mom loves them, mom wants to take care of them, mom wants to keep them safe, and that's completely understandable for all parents. My dad wanted to keep me safe too, but my dad would put me through some risks, like for anyone that has like a real like a baby child, when they're old enough, they'll fall down and they'll encounter some pain. And there's a split second where they look at you as a parent and they decide what to do. And so if my brother and sister fell down, there was that and I've noticed this out of other little kids. There was a split second they'd look up and mom would go, "Are you okay?" And they go, "Ah," and they start crying.
That's exactly it.
And the same thing happened to me. I fell down. I scraped my legs, like my knees were bloodied up. And I look up at my dad and he goes, "Get up."
Yeah.
Okay. And I got up.
Yeah. That's so true. It's always been true. And I know as a parent, it was humorous as heck watching, especially our son, the oldest, he was just the ultimate actor. And I knew that the louder if I saw him fall, he's like, this kid actually fell down an entire set of basement steps once and hit a furnace in the basement. But the reason I knew he was okay is because he was screaming his head off. Because the louder he screamed, I knew the least likely the odds that something was actually wrong. When I got concerned as a parent was when you saw them fall or something and they were quiet. Then it was like, okay, we better figure out what's going on here, because they're experiencing something probably that they haven't done before. True story. I mean, he's 35 and probably wouldn't mind me saying this, but I remember when Jonathan, when he graduated high school, I will tell you this, he was clearly one of the more popular kids in the school. He had so many friends, and I mean in a nice way, like not in a status way or whatever, just the kind of guy people ever wanted to hang out with, or like around here, there's a lot of gatherings at camps and stuff like that because we're in the country. Like Jono was just, was his nickname. But I remember him coming home in about grade 3, small little school, and he came in, got off the school bus, and he stomped into the house, and he, and we said, "What's wrong?" And he said, "Nobody likes me." And I thought, I looked at him for a minute. I let him think about it. And then I said, "Well, I guess you better get back to school and figure out why." And, he went back to school and figured out why. Now, a few years later, somebody, in this neighborhood, I know she doesn't listen to this podcast, so no worries, but her kid was in almost an identical situation. Yeah. And she went charging to the school, demanded a meeting with the principal, and instructed the principal of the school to tell the other children to like her child. Oh. And honestly thought, Now, of course, the principal is sitting there thinking, this woman has 8 heads. Like, what does she really think I'm going to do type of thing? The harm wasn't there. The harm was the child thinking, mom solves all these problems.
Yeah.
That's a really difficult lesson to unlearn, as we get older. I mean, Seth Godin, scared the crap out of me, but, he probably should scare most potential parents, because he basically says,
I love that.
Well, I don't blame you, because he's brilliant. I've got like 19 quotes from him from one 40-minute conversation. But, he says that once kids get to the age of 8, they stop listening to their parents, period. So it doesn't give you a lot of years. They watch. You're watching what your parents are doing right now. And when you're my kid's age, you'll still be watching, what they're doing. That's the other thing that I think parents are really missing today. I know that's not your primary audience, but here's the issue. Like they truly underestimate the extent to which kids actually watch them. And so we've got, one of the things that I talk about a lot on my show, and I'm furious about, is this suggestion that millennials, we don't hear it so much about Gen Z, but still, lazy, entitled, they don't want to work, you know what, that's so far from the truth, it's not funny. I know in the case of millennials, it's very simple. They grew up in a period of time where, first of all, the changes in technology occurred at a pace of which has been the greatest since the Industrial Revolution. So it's been a long time since we've seen that level of change. But far more importantly, they saw all of us come home at the end of the day and know that when we went for that beer, it wasn't because we were happy. They listened to the fights. They listened to the arguments about money. They listened to the complaints and the bitterness about life and the stuff, the conversations that we think the kids are. They took all that in. Mm-hmm. And thank heavens, as a generation, millennials and now you guys for sure have said, yeah, no thanks. That's just, thanks, but no thanks. Just not going to do it. And when you don't comply, which is what's happening, millennials are not complying. Then a generation that and a society that's built on compliance, it goes way beyond the school system. Our entire society is built on compliance. When you don't comply with what society says you're supposed to be doing, we have to find ways of justifying it. And it sure as hell can't be our fault. It's got to be the kids. I mean, because we're smart and we know better. We got gray hair. Like, what do they know, eh? That's really, I mean, it infuriates me. And so all the more power to anybody that defies, systems or anybody. When it comes to deciding what you want to do in life, I don't give a crap what Don Wettrick has to say to you. I couldn't care less, and you shouldn't either. You honestly shouldn't. Mm-hmm. There's only one person in this world that Ava Wettrick should care about when it comes to figuring out what you want in life. That's you. Oh, yeah. Nobody else in the world. Nobody's opinion matters a pound of coon shit. Nothing. Mm-hmm. It's only the person. And if we instill those values in young people, then people like me will be out of business. I'm making lots of money these days mentoring 40, 50-year-old people that are, still, thank heavens, they've come to the realization that, holy cow, I've been complying with a system that's made me miserable, and I've bought into this scarcity mindset that says, that there's nothing I can do about it, that it's not possible. I believe we all have the ability to, regardless of our age, every single person can harness their wisdom and experience and find a way to serve others. And if you do that better, you commit yourself to doing that better than anybody else in the world, or as to the best of your ability. It's not about whatever, I shouldn't have said this. It has nothing to do with other people doing. But if you commit to your own excellence in doing that, you will make a living. You'll create a life that aligns with the things that you care about. You will never be asked to compromise your values because you decide, and if you don't want to work with somebody because it just doesn't feel right, one of the greatest gifts of being an entrepreneur for 30 some odd years is I get to choose who I work with. And I decided 20 years ago, I wrote it down. I literally wrote it down because I was not following this rule and it was making me miserable. I only work with people that I like and respect and that like and respect me. Mm-hmm. And if you can't check all 4 of those boxes, I don't have time for you. I don't care if you offer me $1 million. I've heard people say, Ava, keeps bugging me, wants to do business with me, but I really don't want for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. And I've heard people say what they'll do is they'll double the price. And then the person will, oftentimes that person will still come back and say, I don't care, I still want to work with you. Now, here's where I differ with a lot of people. There are a lot of people that will eventually get to that price point where they just say, okay, well, if she's dumb enough to pay me twice what everybody else is, I'm going to go do this. You can't get me to do that. I don't care. There's no sum of money that would convince me to work with somebody that I didn't like and respect and that didn't like and respect me. And those core values, that respect value is one of the highest values I have. So if I feel it's not a feeling of disrespect. You want to be careful in that one, because we can trick ourselves into feeling we're being disrespected when we're not. That happens all the time because people take things personally when they shouldn't be. In fact, that's one of the biggest problems. I was talking to somebody, I think he's probably 35, 40 years old. And we got into a private message exchange, and he was wanted to get onto my show. And I was just kind of having to explain to him at this stage that it wasn't a good fit. And he took it personally. It was all about him. It was all about, well, he even sent me a message that said, and I quote, "Good luck with your big name show." Now, anybody who knows me knows that I've had a number of guests on my show who have never been on podcasts before in their whole life. And I intend to continue doing that. Yeah. It's not about, sure, it's lovely talking to Seth, but it's not because he's got a big name. It's because of the gifts that he can share, Anybody that can share gifts. But I still tried to mentor. I couldn't help it. I tried to explain that I just made a business decision. Like, unfortunately, you're not important enough for me to get up in the morning and be really worried about whether what you think of me. I'm not wired that way. I just made a business decision that was right for my podcast and for my listeners, because I can't, just like you, we can't break our trust with our listeners. If we're going to ask them to listen, we have to know there's value in what we're putting out there, right? And I tried to explain to him that his problem was that he was looking at it as if it was all about him. That, me saying no was about me telling him he wasn't worthy and all this kind of stuff. And I blocked him and for like 3 hours. Then I unblocked him and went back, because I wanted to give him time to calm down because he was getting all ramped up. And I went back and I said, look, here's why I made the decision. It's not personal. And, but what, the thing I would suggest you do is to learn to not look at things through the lens of, of it being about you. Mm-hmm. But he just replied back with 4 minutes of audio messages on LinkedIn, explaining that that's exactly what he was doing. He was listening to what I was saying about him. So it wasn't about him. It was about what I was saying about him. And, you just have to say, okay, you're not at a stage of life where you're ready to listen. You're not ready to listen. I had to block him again, because I'm not going to let that negativity, into my space. I've only blocked like 5 people on LinkedIn. I rarely do it. That's another thing, and it's a hard thing to learn. You're going to be challenged on that one a lot, because as you grow, you're going to have feelings that people are, that it's sometimes about you. Like, just all I would say to yourself is that just understand that you're just not that important. I'm not that important. Mm-hmm. Like, if somebody's really got you angry, really stop and think about it. And think, am I so important that that person gets up in the morning? The first thing they think about when they get up is, I want to mess up Ava's day. A teenager might occasionally fall into that trap, but no adult does. Mm-hmm. There's too many other things going on in life. And especially in business where there's no reason.
And just like the sake of energy too. Like, it's such an energy suck. Terrible. And I want to invest my energy into, going on walks outside with my dog. There's so many better things in life as well.
Yeah. No, energy is absolutely everything. Mm-hmm. And so we have to learn the power of discernment to understand and firstly never take things personally. And but then also not be stupid. If somebody's not in a point in their life where they're ready to engage in a way that isn't going to have drama. I finally said to him, I just don't have any time for drama in my life. I won't let drama into my, my professional life. And he said, well, I'm not adding drama. And I said, well, I give up, because what do you think this is? I got 25 years on this guy. I've done a lot of things in my life that he would like to do. He could be spending that time talking to me and asking me questions, asking for advice. But instead of doing that, he was attacking me. Now, how could that possibly advance his position in life?
Energy suck. Waste time.
Bye. That's exactly what I said to him. I said bye. Yeah.
It's short. It's always short term versus long term, and that's such a great note to end on. And we could talk for hours. I love talking. I love listening. No, seriously. I love talking to you. I love listening to all of this because it's so valuable. And I know my audience is going to take so much away from this. But before we go, where can everyone find you, and where can everyone look at your stuff?
Yeah, so screwthenaysayers.com is absolutely, the easiest place. They'll find links to the podcast. I'm going through a major, I'm not sure when this is coming out, Ava, I'm going through a major brand change. I do encourage people to come back because I got a neat little book called Screw the Naysayers, They Suck Anyway. And it's a really sarcastic look at the messages parents and adults are giving to young people these days. That's really what the entire little hour and a half read is. And as soon as that new website is up, which will be before the middle of May, I'm giving that away. I've decided that I just want to get it out there, so people can pick that up for free. I don't make any money on working with young people. At one stage, I'd sort of toyed with some business models in that direction. Mm-hmm. I've decided that my gift is working with people closer to my ages, but I absolutely love engaging, answering questions, popping on, virtual coffee chats and stuff like that. So, any of your listeners that don't mind a silver-haired Canadian off dropping some wisdom from time to time, reach out. Screwthenaysayers.com. Tim at screwthenaysayers.com.
Yeah. Well, once again, Tim, I fully enjoyed having you on, and thank you so much.
Hey, it's been my great privilege.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this interview series. I would love to know some of your best takeaways. You can find me easily on LinkedIn or Instagram just by searching Ava Wettrick, and I'll happily get back to you and have a conversation. If you really enjoyed this episode, please feel free to leave a rating in iTunes. That act will compound in ways that I can't even imagine. As you have just found a mentor here, go out into the world and see who you can be a mentor to today.